Welcome back to API Kitchen, where we cook up secure APIs. I'm Confident Stavely, your chef de cuisine in this unique kitchen. Today, we're diving even deeper into securing our APIs with standards like the OWASP ASVS. We're also seasoning our APIs with the stringent standards of PCI DSS. Let's make sure our APIs aren't just functional, but also compliant. Just as a recipe card outlines the steps to culinary perfection, the OWASP ASVS provides us with an organized list of security controls, a veritable checklist for securing our applications and APIs. It's about precision, about ensuring that every API we serve meets the highest standards of security. OWASP ASVS categorizes security controls into 3 levels, each with its own depth and complexity. Level 1 is the basic seasoning, covering essential security controls that every software should possess, ensuring that fundamental security is baked right in. Level 2 is for the more complex applications. It requires a more robust security posture, an intermediate level that caters to the specific needs of applications handling sensitive user data. And then there's level 3, the gourmet of security standards, designed for applications that demand the highest level of security, where advanced protection mechanisms safeguards against even the most sophisticated cyber threats. Our development teams marinate their APIs in these security controls, slowly simmering the authentication and authorization mechanisms, while our security teams brace the infrastructure against a medley of vulnerabilities. Now let's stare in some expert advice from our guest. Nick Aleks is a distinguished figure in the cybersecurity world, known for his offensive security and penetration testing expertise. He is the co-author of Black Hat GraphQL and Black Hat Bash. Welcome to the API Kitchen, Nick.
Thank you. It's a huge pleasure and honor to be here in the API Kitchen with you to cook up an awesome episode.
Yeah, and close out the whole season. Yippee! It's so good to have you here. My first question here is, when conducting API security assessments for clients, have you had the opportunity to utilize the OWASP ASVS as a framework for ensuring applications meet security best practices? I'd like you to please offer some tips for developers and information security professionals on how to effectively customize OWASP ASVS to meet the security needs of the applications.
Yes, I really love the OWASP ASVS, the Application Security Verification Standard. Now, this particular standard is really awesome, not just for testing, but also for how we can best design and deploy our software. In regards to some of the advice that I have for folks, I'm going to approach it from both a hacker's lens as well as a builder's lens. The very first tip I have is for the builders and developers and defenders. This is all about knowing your web service and your APIs and where they would fall on the OWASP ASVS. There are 3 levels in the ASVS. Level 1, this is for every application out there, really entry-level security controls and requirements. Level 2 is for applications and APIs that handle sensitive information, such as PII, financial data, health data. And then level 3 is where it gets really intense. And this is particularly for web applications and APIs that have critical infrastructure components to them. And this is where the most amount of security verification requirements and controls are being recommended. Just like in cooking, knowing your spice levels is really important. So take a look at the ASVS and look at those 3 levels and identify which level your application would fall in. Afterwards, once you've dipped your toes in one of the levels, such as level 1 or level 2, then you can increase the spice level to something like a level 3. Tip number 2. I get asked all the time by red teamers, hackers, and fellow bug bounty researchers, where do I start when I'm testing a web application or an API? And one of the best answers I can provide is looking at the OWASP ASVS as a tool to provide a comprehensive assessment against an API or a web service. It breaks down all of the different things for you to test in 14 categories, everything ranging from access control tests all the way down to business logic flaws. It's really a great way to do a comprehensive assessment that leaves your customers pretty happy. Tip number 3. This is one for defenders and developers. When you look at the ASVS, look at it during the design and development stage when you're building an application and an API. This standard, especially its chapters, are a great resource for when you're doing threat modeling. It can give you and the team a lot of different lenses of how to approach an application and how it might be hacked, looking at the authentication controls, the access controls, and finding ways that they can be broken is really important when threat modeling. It's something that you should put in front of developers and allow them to pick and choose which requirements best fit the application that they're developing. I know that in security, we tend to grab a standard or a compliance or a best practice and just dump it right on top of the developer's bench and say, be compliant. But this is really a standard that can work really well with developers, especially as they plan out their sprints. Being able to bake in some of these features and unit tests into the pipeline are really, really important. Now, this next tip that I have is for both my fellow hackers as well as my fellow defenders and builders. Use tools like Nuclei, SemGrep, and codeql to perform automated static and dynamic verifications based on the OWASP ASVS. Now, the standard is great. It has a lot of great recommendations, and all of the level 1 recommendations and controls can be pen tested. You can actually go off and validate whether or not an application is following level 1 controls. But it's even better if you can codify those tests. By doing so, you get to work at the speed that your pipeline delivers, being able to test at the cadence and frequency that you build and get that assurance that your applications and APIs are secure. So codify the ASVS into your pipelines, into your unit tests, using tools like Nuclei, SemGrep, and codeql. Tip number 5, in your next pen test or bug bounty finding, map your finding to an OWASP ASVS requirement. This is going to make it a lot easier for the defenders to triage and really work with the standard to implement proper controls and tests to ensure that they've patched it properly. Think about when you find an issue, instead of only delivering the finding in a PDF report, why not generate a Nuclei template that goes along with it? This will allow for the defenders and the patchers to know exactly when they've validated that they've patched a problem. And then finally, if you're looking for your next pen tester or you've received a report from a bug bounty researcher, why not ask for a mapping of the ASVS requirement that is mapped to that particular finding? Maybe even ask for a Nuclei template. I know that there's a lot of bug bounty programs out there that provide an incentive for Nuclei templates or SemGrep rules or codeql rules to be attached with the finding itself. This makes it, again, a great process for building your automated library of ASVS controls.
That is fantastic. And I like how you've really brought in secure by design in your tips and the advisory that you've just given. So fantastic one. Can you tell me something that you would say is an underutilized API security best practice that you consider the salt of the earth, a basic yet potent aspect that may greatly improve an organization's security posture?
This is an amazing question. I think without a doubt, the most important control and behavior and practice to put in is continuous testing and validation. This is so important. Testing isn't just something a hacker does at the very end of your product's release. You should put in place the proper testing and validation process throughout the entire life cycle of your API. So, test as you plan, especially picking out the ingredients for your API, the dependencies, the third-party applications. Test as you build, those unit tests, those Nuclei tests, and then test as you deploy as well. So continuous testing and validation is, in my opinion, one of the best behaviors you can put into a secure API and its development lifecycle.
And that's how you secure an API in our kitchen. That concludes today's episode and marks the end of this season. And I want to thank you for watching my videos and sharing them. Remember to subscribe to CCNet TV and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new updates from me. Until then, keep your kitchen clean, your code cleaner, and your APIs secure.